Welcome back to the Zero E Michigan podcast. I'm Carl Bloss, and my co-host is
Larry Hudson.
And today we have with us again Dave Stein. Dave was with us before talking about his Chevy Volt hack. So that was a fascinating story. If you haven't had a chance to look at that and you're into that sort of thing. But what I wanted to talk about today is a topic that's near and dear to Larry's heart. And I feel like it's something he, like every other time we talk about, he's like, we need to do something about this. And this happens to be the level 2 charging at the Celebrations Cinemas in Portage, Michigan. And so there's a story there. I'm not that familiar with the background and what was there before and what's there now. But apparently they used to have charging, they don't anymore. So I'm going to let these two gentlemen take it away. So first of all, Dave, there's a backstory here, how you and Larry met, and it involves that location.
Yeah, I had bought my first and current plug-in hybrid, my 17 Chevy Volt. I bought it in August of 16 and was amazed that I could plug in for free at these places and thought, well, this isn't going to last, but I'll use it while I can. And I also enjoy movies. And ran into I think I was just plugging in and some guy was just unplugging and turned out to be Larry. That's how we met. And then and since then, I think that was probably fall of 16. And we had met at other places and just came to know each other through that. Yeah, they were on network charge points, and then they became off network charge points, the older style, two individual ones, and then they upgraded them. I was happy about that. The cords are much more flexible. They upgraded them to the new ones and immediately shut them off.
Yeah, so I think the contract is 2 years, and I had talked to the maintenance guy, the one who's in charge of salting and plowing, and he was like, "Yeah, they're not happy with the cost that ChargePoint has been charging them." And I heard the same complaint at Western College. Western at one point, I think, had 10, 15 of the ChargePoint, but it's
Or
a
more,
$60
yeah.
a month. If I remember right, it was $60 a month per charger fee, and essentially I think there's a cell phone in it. Carl probably could talk more to that. And so the college was complaining about it every time we went to any of their, meetings having to do with just offering electric car charging stuff. That was their biggest complaint. Is like, we can't afford this. They're not really being used that much. We don't see. And so this was back, I got my Volt in 2012, and I've been using that charger there. It was already installed, so I don't know how and why, but I'm assuming it was part of that grant that helped Kalamazoo have more chargers, I think, than any other city at that point.
And were these chargers free, or was there a charge to use them?
Free.
Free.
Okay, and that was a decision by the movie theater, by the charging host, I
Must have been.
presume.
Yeah.
Yeah. And was there ever any discussion with the movie theater management about what their incentive was? They just wanted to be, environmentally friendly. They wanted to draw in EV traffic. They just
I
happened
know
to get a
some places
grant.
will put up a sign, why they. There was a church downtown that had a single Clipper Creek, and they put up a sign why they felt this was useful, and it didn't last a year because some apartments bought the property. But so some places will put up a sign why they're putting it there. We think the environment is important or whatever, but there was no indication from a user standpoint. I don't know, Larry, you said you
Yeah.
had some contact
And
with some
so,
management.
so yeah, a little history. So every year on my birthday around this time, my son and I usually go to a movie there, and then I see the newer version chargers are standing out there. And so as soon as it seemed like they came on, and then 2 years later, there's a trash bag around them, and there's still
Yeah.
a trash bag around them. So they've been just standing there, cords and everything. It's the newer, nicer charge point. But as soon as they came out of contract, I guess part of the issue is, right, the old version would work when they're offline, out of contract,
Right.
but the new version, charge point became more crafty, and they made sure, oh, if you're not
Mm,
paying us our monthly $60, which I got a problem with, right? That whole business plan wasn't sustainable. It was too much. And they, and so I think they were giving the electric community a black eye by this. I understand and Carl mentions, he talked to one guy, you're not making money with level 2 charging. It's just
Right.
Yeah,
what
nobody gets rich from level 2 charging. I had somebody from the Red E network tell me, which is why they were focused on DC fast chargers. It's from a business model, it's a little bit better. So speaking of which, let's talk about business models, because that's kind of where this conversation is headed, I think. And first of all, let's leave DC fast charging out of this, because
Yeah.
those
Beast.
are multi-$100,000 installations. That's probably not something that a movie theater is going to do. Also, from a location standpoint, I took a quick peek at where this location is. Larry sent me the address, and it's actually not far from the Sam's Club where the Electrify
Right.
America station is.
Right.
So somebody that really wants to pass through and just charge for 20 minutes or whatever, they're probably not going to go to a movie theater parking lot. The only other one that I can think of that's like that is in Lansing. The older supercharger was in a shopping plaza with a movie theater, but there was a bunch of other stuff. There was a Fairfield Inn, there's a Culver's, and so forth. So let's talk about the business model. Again, let's take DC fast charging right off the table, because in my mind, that's not really the right location for it, because you don't want to leave your car sitting on a DCFC for 2 hours while you watch a movie. And having said that, I looked at the address for this. It's very close to the Sam's Club in Portage where the Electrify America station is. So somebody that's going to come through and charge in 20 minutes, that's probably the kind of venue that they're going to go to.
Yeah.
Although I always have a question about this. I'm not a Sam's Club member, so like, can I go in and use the restroom? Anyway,
I've used it a couple
Yeah.
times with the wife's EV6, and if you just nonchalantly walk in like you belong there, I haven't had an issue. But yeah, I'm not a
Yeah.
Sam's Club member
Anyway,
either. I
there's
just use the restroom.
yeah. I mean, there's other stuff in the area, but anyway, yeah, and I can't think of too many other locations with movie theaters and charging. The only other one that comes up is the Tesla Supercharger in Lansing. The older one is in a shopping plaza that has a movie theater, but they also have a Fairfield Inn, which during COVID, they also wouldn't let you walk in and use the bathroom, which was kind of annoying, but you had a Culver's and some other places. So, Larry, why are you upset about this location going away? What makes this so special? Is it just kind of like loss aversion? I had something and it's gone,
Yeah.
or why this location? Who do you expect is going to be the main user of this location?
I know that it would probably, I was trying to think about this. For 5 years, I was able to go up. I have to go to Portage, it seems like, let's just say every other week. So that's, 52 weeks a year. So at least 20, 30 times. And I would make it a point to go plug in because I could. And is it because they were free? I'm in a Volt. I can't get that much electricity. So if it was charging me by the amount of electricity, I would have still been using it. Just right. I felt like, hey, people need to see that normal people plug in or whatever, right?
Yeah,
That
so you're an
people,
early adopter. But then what were
yeah.
you doing? Were you actually going to the movies, or were you doing something else
I
nearby?
would go to the movies. I'd have to say it got me to go to the movies. Currently, I only go up there on my birthday when my son takes me. Prior to that, though, I would say I was, maybe every second, third time I plugged in there, I would wind up going, oh, there happens to be a movie I can go walk in and see now. And so I would go do that.
So it was
So it
actually
did get
driving
me,
business for them, right? It was
yeah,
actually
yeah. So
driving
it did
business.
help,
I
but
mean,
not every time, but it did. One of the things I wanted to bring up, both Dave and I are talking about, they wound up putting those chargers at the two closest parking spots, which
Yeah.
used to be handicapped. And I was plugging in, got in my car, was waiting, I got there early, was waiting for the movie to start. And a guy came up in his handicap van, parked right next to me, slammed the door open, and just, luckily the Volt has a little bumper thingy and just hit it. And I wanted to jump out at him. And then, he whips his walking, machine out and, stumbles on by. And so I was like, yeah, I get it. Right. And so that would be the other thing, that it should be moved. They trenched the power across the sidewalk all the way out to this little island. We should move it at least 5 places, ideally all the way to the end, which I think would be like 10 spots.
right.
I
Well,
would really like that to
yeah,
be done.
So, I mean, to be honest, that's a different discussion, but it's also kind of a symptom of early EV chargers where
Yeah.
people weren't really thinking about those kind of things and actually making some of them ADA compliant, but also this whole concept that if you put them close to the building, people are going to get irritated. People that don't drive EVs are going to get irritated because like, oh, you're taking up the prime spots and it's no good
Right.
to me. And but then you have to counterbalance that with the fact that it takes a lot of wiring to put something way in the back of the lot. You know, you're talking about, 4 6 gauge wire and hundreds of feet gets into the money pretty quickly. So there's kind of this optimization that has to take place. Um,
Yeah.
Dave, so what was your use case for these? And is it, I know you're a walker, right? I mean, last time
Yeah.
we talked about you like to park your car and walk. And I mean, were you going to the movie theater? So do you think this is a business driver for a location like a movie theater?
I would say a little, how much I can't really quantify. And yeah, I would say 80% of my use was I'd be in the area, going somewhere else, and I'd go there, park, walk to wherever I was going, meet friends for dinner on Westnedge, wherever. Occasionally, so that at the time we lived in Plainwell, which is north of there. So the theater at the north end of Kalamazoo is much closer to my house. If I was coming to Kalamazoo to see a movie, prior to those being there, I would always go to the one in Kalamazoo on the north end of town. But once I found that I could charge there for free, then it did pull me a little bit more. Not a huge moviegoer, but the times where I thought about it, oh, I'll go use that one instead. So if there were two choices in town, one has free charging and one doesn't, absolutely, I'm going to go to the one that has free charging. And I did that occasionally. So, how much extra revenue is that for them? I can't really quantify that. And I'm just a one-off sample, but
Sure. Yeah, and this is all anecdotal, but
yeah,
again, I have to put on my devil's advocate hat a little bit for the movie theater. Like what's my driver for actually wanting to put charging back
yeah.
in? And
I
now,
think if there's another one in town, then that gives you, an edge. But if you're the only theater in town, I, I think that goes away.
yeah. And so the other thing that's happened is when you two were first using this, we're talking 2016, 2017 time
Yep,
frame, right?
yep,
So the vehicles that were available were basically the Nissan Leaf, the Chevy Volt, the Teslas, but Teslas at that time, at least the Tesla was a super luxury car and you had to, pay a lot
yeah,
of
the
money
S,
for it. So you weren't
right,
concerned about getting some free charging. So these were the short range vehicles that were possibly using this because you're coming from Three Rivers, you're coming from Kalamazoo, you're coming from somewhere in the region, and maybe you actually need the charge to get back home. Fast forward to today, we have, an entry level Bolt EV or a Kia Niro are having ranges of 200 to 250 miles. So I don't
right,
know about you, but I live in Muskegon and it's about 100 miles to Kalamazoo, and I'm not driving down there just for a movie theater and then need to charge and come home. So is there really even still a business case for something like a movie theater if they're giving it away for free? Now it's a separate discussion if they charge and they're
right.
actually making a little bit of money on it. So again, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for me it's still the same. Relatively, because I have a Volt, so relatively slow charging compared to almost anything out there. But I would still, since there are the two theaters in town, if I were going to go see a movie, I would consider that theater first because I can charge for free. Okay, maybe it's only $2 worth of electricity at the most, if I'm empty. Um, but just in my mind, hey, it's neat. All things being equal, yeah, I'll go to the one where I can plug in. And also, like Larry said, just showing people that normalizing um, plugging in your vehicle if you're going to be somewhere for a couple hours.
Mhm. I think we're getting almost past that point of normalization because I'm seeing a lot more
Mm,
station being used. No, you don't think so?
yeah,
I
I
don't
still
agree.
think there's a lot of, I think maybe in some crowds and maybe in the crowd you hang out in,
Yeah,
but
right.
I, I think, I think it's, and I don't want to say politicizing, but it's a different camps maybe. And so not all camps think that's normal still, I think.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
agree. There's still a lot more normalizing needs to be done. I don't think we're just scratching the surface. Like you pointed out, when we go to our EV meetings, and Carl, you're so your job is out constantly pushing it. So you're really in the fishbowl, so to speak. And I always feel like when I go to the EV meetings, we're just preaching to the choir. It's the same people that were
Right.
there 10 years ago when I first started doing it with Paul Pensella at Green Earth, Michigan, right? It's the same people. Not that many new, unfortunately, although there are more cars out there, but there's still a long way, education, normalizing of it. And so
Yeah.
then that brings us back to, we also mentioned, and you had mentioned, Carl, well, why not put it at the big Crossroad Mall? Well, one, their parking lot is a mess, right? The movie theater stays up on its parking lot. It's always neat, clean, tidy. That big mall, I think, is on its way out, right? It's half empty.
Probably malls in general. We have the same thing here at the Lakes Mall in
Yeah,
Muskegon.
this one in particular, their parking lot, Larry's was not kidding. Their parking lot is a mess, has been a mess for years. It's getting worse. They just don't want to do any maintenance on it. They're even suing the city now because the city had agreed with the previous owners to put a bus stop in part of their parking lot, and now the new owners are suing the city. They just, I don't think they want to invest a nickel in anything.
Okay.
Just my
Well, and maybe this
perception,
is,
but
and maybe this is a special situation. I mean, although,
yeah,
as we said,
this,
malls are kind of declining a little bit.
mhm,
Everybody's
mhm,
buying stuff at Amazon. But let me go back to another point. So you're both, and I do this too, by the way. I like to charge in places to show people that the chargers are being used. I don't like to fill them up. If I'm the last person there, I may not
right.
charge there if I don't need the charge. I like to put my electric motorcycle out there because it draws a lot of people in and something different, right? I'm sure one day when I get an Aptera, I'm going to do that, although it should be charging in the sun.
Man, I
But
can't wait for that car to come
yeah,
out. That
well,
is
let's
sweet.
see. I'm hopefully optimistic that it's all coming to fruition. My question really is, since you're kind of proponents of EV technology, would you be willing to pay more than you pay at home to charge? So, for example, at home, you're going to pay, I don't know, 15 cents per kilowatt hour if you're charging off peak. So now let's say the movie theater says, well, I'm going to charge you 30 cents per kilowatt hour. Are you willing to pay that to signal to others that I might also say virtue signal to others that, you know, EVs are a thing?
I would occasionally, I wouldn't go there to fill up the wife's car. It's got an 80 kilowatt hour battery, but for my Volt, especially in the winter, because then it's sort of preconditioning the battery for you. So I would occasionally, and again, it's the Volt doesn't have a huge battery, so that's not a big expense for me. If they're charging 30 cents a kilowatt hour or whatever, sure, it's more than at home, but it's awful convenient. I might, I
What
can't say
size
for
is your
sure, but
battery, Dave? What's
the in the EV6 or my Volt.
you got second gen Volt? I have first gen.
Yeah,
My first gen, I think,
it's
is 12, right? You're
so the second
Visible.
gen, the total capacity is 19. It's a little bit of change, 19.1, 19.2. Usable, I think, is 15 something. I don't remember. They leave about a 10% ish buffer, 10
Right,
or
because it's
15% buffer.
it's designed to go all the way to 0 and all the way to 100
Yep.
from a
Yep.
user
Even though it's
perspective.
not really.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
And
built
that,
a buffer in there. Makes
and I like
sense.
that. It just makes it
Yeah.
easier. I don't have to think about it. Oh, I should only charge it 80%. Nope.
Right.
The engineers have handled it, and I like it that way. Yeah.
Right. So 15 kilowatt hours times 30 cents would be $4.50. So you'd be
Yeah.
willing to pay that on top of a movie or whatever else you're doing,
Sure.
just to kind of show people that you're charging. But like you said, the EV6, now you're in the 60, 70 kilowatt hour range. And that if you're charging at a rate that's twice your home rate, then it's like, yeah,
Yeah. That
maybe
gets
not.
up there.
Right.
But that is the case at DCFCs.
Sure.
And so, but if you're on a road trip, you don't have a choice, and it still costs less than gasoline. So why not? And
And it's the
I also
convenience.
can't fill up in
Yeah.
18 minutes at home. Right.
Right, exactly. So then again, kind of looping back to the movie theater point of view or the business point of view. So now let's say 25, 30 cents per kilowatt hour makes sense, right? At some point, in my opinion, free isn't sustainable anymore
Mhm.
unless you're using that to drive business to your location. Like you said, Dave, if they're two movie theaters in town and one of them has charging and one of them doesn't, then maybe I'm going to pick that. So I think of it like a
Yeah,
fuel
definitely.
perks. Same thing in my area here in Muskegon. We have a couple different Myers. I will drive a couple extra miles, ironically, to go to the location that has a free Shell recharge because I
Mm,
can get free charging for 1 hour while I'm shopping. So it costs Myers pennies, but meanwhile I'm spending,
yep.
$100 on groceries or whatever. So for them, it may make sense. But now if I'm the movie theater, let's say I'm a movie theater, I'm another business, and I'm the only game in town, and somebody comes to me from the EV community and says, "Man, you should really offer EV charging. Your past management did it before, uh, and we'd really like to see this again." What's the story? What's the elevator pitch from the EV community to the management of this location to say, "Yeah, that's compelling. That makes me want to put in EV charging."
I have to be honest. I'd have to say I don't think there is a strong case for the movie theater. On the case, like Dave and I both were using that, and I was going to movies half the time, let's say. And so that case for have it being free, it's a hard sell. But as Portage community offering it, so that was we've been talking about this, and so that's been my latest thought is that hopefully someone watches this, but I should stop by Portage. David mentioned Portage has since we've been charging, since 2016, has installed a bunch more charge points in the community, right, Dave?
8, yeah, there's 4 at the Portage Senior Center, there's 2 at City Hall, and 2 at the library. Now they're not free. Well, they used to be free. The ones at the library are new, and those were never free because they're so new. But the ones at City Hall used to be free, and then they were free for the first 2 hours, and then like 75 cents an hour, which at
Still
the rate
cheap.
the EV6 charges, yeah, that's cheaper than I can charge at home. But now I was just checking the ChargePoint app. It looks like it's 15 cents a kilowatt hour plus 75 cents an hour. So now it's a little bit more than what I would charge at home. Still convenient because of the location. If they're West Ninch and Center area. But yeah, so there's 8. Portage had added 8 in that region.
For the
So that does paint the picture. Portage is wanting to have chargers up. There's
They put
several
4 at
apartments
the
and
senior center alone. Yeah.
yeah, there's several apartments and condos around the movie theater. So my latest thought was the pitch would probably make more sense is why don't you offer this as a community? One, you guys take care of your parking lot. It's a nice place to charge. There happens to be a walking path that borders right along there. So it's just perfect. You plug in, and a lot of people park there to go walk the path. Again, because it is pretty much the nicest parking lot around there, right?
so
And
that
and so I see a lot of people park there, go walk the path. So hopefully we could get Portage to sponsor it. And then that leads us into, okay, how about the orange? So for people don't know,
hold
orange,
on. Let's Larry, before we go there,
okay,
again, let's finish with the use case. Then we can talk about technical solutions. Okay.
okay, perfect.
So what I wanted to loop back on is I did see, because you gave me the address again, I haven't been there, is that you have this Crossroads Village. I guess it's an apartment complex that's right there.
Yep.
So my question really is what is the use case? Who is the user? So people like us who have a garage at home and can charge easily overnight, we don't need to charge there. We
Right.
could charge there, right? But it's a convenience. It's opportunity charging. But the people who could actually benefit from this are people who don't have a place to charge at home. The people at an apartment, at a condo, they don't have their own private garage. Their condo or apartment complex doesn't have this. My daughter fits into that scenario, as a recent college graduate just getting started in the job world. She lives in an apartment that doesn't have charging at her house. So where are these people going to charge? So to me, that makes sense. And then the question is then why not just put it at a place like the Crossroads Village or the other apartment complexes? Is the scenario here that the movie theater is centrally located for a lot of different people?
I think that's part of it. And then back to like Dave and I keep talking though, they take care of their parking lot. It's a nice parking lot. You know, you're not going through big potholes. You know, it's on an obstacle course to get to. There's Blaine's Farmers Market right across the street. So that's kind of like a Walmart. Um,
So let me
Tractor
ask you another
Supply.
question. You know, your wife or daughter, she's coming home from work at 6:30 at night. It's dark in the winter. Is she gonna go to the movie theater and plug in and charge and then walk to an apartment nearby? Do you think people,
Not in the winter.
that are at risk are going to be willing to do that?
Yeah, when you painted that picture,
So
yeah,
this is why I'm sorry to be devil's advocate, right? But it sounds like a great thing. Hey, they have these chargers that they put in, and they're gone, and now let's fix it, right? But the question is, in my mind, who is it serving? Let's take it a step further. Let's say we've found a reasonable location where somebody's willing to park overnight. You know, maybe a community charging. So, fun fact: Consumers Energy does have a community charging incentive for people that live in apartments and that sort of thing. And there are some rebates and incentives available for it. So let's say we found a good location for that. So now, Larry, you mentioned the orange charger. So I'm going to tick off just a few possible technical solutions. Let's say there was a place like the movie theater that had the power already there. Okay, maybe they have to relocate it to properly place them in the parking lot. So, are we talking about, putting charge points back in? Kind of what I heard from you earlier was we don't really like the charge point business model, and maybe it's changed. That probably needs to be something that somebody should look into to see if they still operate the same way. Do we refit? And I'm looking at my notes here. It's just, do we refit with another network supplier, somebody like a Blink, somebody like an EV Connect, something like that? Um, and then do we put non-network chargers like a Grizzly or the Enphase, which are the former Clipper Creek? But then we get back into, well, those are free. If they're non-network, there's no way to bill the user. And
Right.
then, Larry, you brought up the orange EVs. For those not familiar, the orange EV it's a company that manufactures and has a network of smart outlets. And the way this works is they're bright orange, that's their signature color. It's got a QR code. It is networked. And now because it's so much less complex, it doesn't have a cable. You have to bring your own EVSE. You plug it into that, but you have to activate it. You get charged for the electricity, and then the site host gets reimbursed for the electricity. And obviously, Orange EV needs to make some money, so there's a markup there. Or another one I thought of is have a third party come in who owns and operates the station. So here in Michigan, we're seeing a lot of these Red E stations. I was just up in Boyne City, and my understanding is that the business model with Red E is often that they will finance the entire installation. They need some right of ways. They need access to the energy, obviously. But then beyond that, then they're also the ones that collect the revenue. And there's probably some revenue sharing. Obviously, I don't know what happens behind the scenes. But the key is for municipalities and other places that don't have a lot of capital money to put in, thousands of dollars worth of EV charging, that's a potential solution. So what are your thoughts about all that? So we found a good solution. Which direction do you think things should go in?
So the orange is new to me. I hadn't heard of that. Larry and I have discussed briefly my opinion of a bring your own EVSE type of situation. I'm not as comfortable with that personally because my concern about somebody taking my EVSE. There's no uh, again, Larry and I've talked about it, but I haven't seen a good way to make me assured that nobody's going to walk off with my $200 EVSE or $300 whatever your portable. Um, so it sounds like a more sustainable solution, the orange thing for the apartment type complexes. But my concern would be, how do you ensure that your EVSE is there when you come back in the morning? Um, the the red E you said is so that's like a blink or no?
Yeah, it's another network, but and I think Blink also does this. I think they have multiple business models, everything from the site host buys the equipment and pays for the installation, and then really, the host is just paying network fees, but they're getting the bulk of the revenue, all the way to Blink owns and operates everything. And I'm just saying Blink, it can be others.
Sure. Yep.
SEMA Connect used to be out there, by the way. They were bought by Blink. Which, fun fact, if you have a SEMA Connect card, it works on Blink now. But there are other networks that basically say, well, we're going to come in and own and operate everything, but then we keep the lion's share of the revenue, and we're going to revenue share a little bit, or maybe it's just revenue neutral for the site hosts, and they get the benefit of additional business.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that solution in a lot of cases. As we said before, I think nobody gets rich from level 2 charging. So if you can let some outside organization come in. But anyway, now that I've skewed that discussion, what are your thoughts about that?
So
Larry?
tell us also the orange, Carl,
Mhm.
is they're not if nobody uses it that month, they're not going to charge the full fee, right? You said that's
that's my understanding. And you can look it up if you Google orange EV chargers, they have a system where, let's say you are a condo or an apartment management company, and you want to deploy EV charging for your residents. And to address Dave's very valid concern that, somebody's going to walk off with my $300 cable, let's say they put this in a gated garage below ground where it's difficult for somebody to access. My in-laws have a place in Phoenix like that, where this big chain gate comes down and really nobody can easily walk in. There's to every lock there's a key. But I could see it in a situation like that. So yeah, the way this works is in RNGV, their business model is lower power EV charging, definitely overnight. So they have this smart outlet that they have both a NEMA 520 and a NEMA 620. So the idea, it's 20 amps. So you can use standard wiring. What is that? 12 gauge, Larry? We talked about that. So 12 gauge wire. So nothing exotic. Perhaps you already have an outlet out there, and you can retrofit, or you put a bank of these things in. And by the way, they all talk to each other. They're meshed. One of them can go out to a cell network, and the other can all talk to each other. And yeah, the ones that are being used that particular month, there's a certain overhead that Orange EV gets from that usage. And my understanding, if there are outlets that are not used for an entire month, then there's no fee. Probably to a certain point. They can't stay on network forever. But I think their business model is kind of like the original charge point, where you've bought the equipment, and if you're not maintaining it at some point, then they're just going to default to the energy being available. So in other words, you can plug it and use it, and then it's up to the condo association or whoever to say, yeah, I'm just going to leave it that way. I'm going to rip them out and do away with this. So, I mean, I think that's a reasonable solution. The only downside is that, you are power limited. A NEMA 620 will deliver 16 amps. So 16 times 240 volts. What is that? Like something like 4 kilowatts.
Just under 4.
So
3.8,
yeah.
3.9.
So you're going to, for a 40 kilowatt hour battery, like a mid-range Leaf, you're going to charge it up overnight in 10 hours. For anything that's double that, you're going to fill up half your battery in 10-12 hours. But for a lot of people, that's their daily commute.
That's more than enough. Yeah.
What does that cost work out to?
The cost of,
you were saying it's up 4 kilowatts an hour is what that would produce?
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's what it delivers. And then it's a matter of,
But if the user is paying for it, there's no expense for the property owner, is my understanding. So the only expense for the property owner is
the electricity.
wire.
Well, no, so the property owner pays for the electricity, but then it's recovered through the billing through the Orange network.
So net, they're not paying for the electricity.
Correct. So yeah, it's semantics, to be fair. But
sure.
Let's say you're paying 15 cents per kilowatt hour overnight, and then you can charge the user 25. Okay. And then,
which
So
is still a lot less than gasoline.
still a lot, right. And then for the property owner, they can make a 10 cent per kilowatt hour profit. The cost of the individual unit, I think, is $400, and then plus the wiring. So it's not outrageous. You're not talking thousands for each one. So you can deploy these essentially at multiple locations within, say, a parking garage. So I don't know so for that use case, that seems to work out well, and that's kind of who Orange EV is marketing to. But what do you think about that for, back to the movie theaters?
I mean, I think currently, again, after thinking this through, because I throw it out without much background, and Carl and Dave both were hitting me up with reasons on why maybe my initial ideas weren't working. So now I'm at Portage sponsoring the bill or helping with it, and it's more of a community thing so that people around there could just come and charge. In the movie theater advantages, they're going to pick up a couple clients. It doesn't cost them anything. The good thing about the Orange is there's no maintenance. It's nice to have plugs and cords, but the maintenance, they get damaged, snow, plow trucks take them out.
And they occasionally break the relays. The release relays seem to break.
Yeah. So
actually, that may not be. So Portage already owns 8 of them. What if Celebration just said, "Look, our money is sunk. We've got trash bags over them. Let's leave them in place, but donate them to Portage. Let Portage just add those 2 to the Portage account. Billing stays the same, but the theater still gets to say, look, we've got chargers. Come visit us."
That's a good idea. We had to go make that. Let's go do a drop into Portage, Dave.
So what are you thinking about the business model? Keep it free for the user, and then the city
just
Portage?
have it be just like the other 8 in Portage, free for the first 2 hours, which for a movie is right about the maybe bump it up an hour, free for 3 hours, whatever. But have those 2 sort of under the Portage billing umbrella. Have them belong to the city of Portage, but they would stay physically where they are.
But then technically you need to upgrade them again, right? Assuming you're not going to stay, that the current hardware is not capable, and you can't just sort of,
But they
switch the
are.
account back on. Are they? I don't know.
They're new charge points.
Okay.
Just have Portage take over the account.
I mean, if the account is valid, I mean, ChargePoint may say, well, somebody let this account lapse, and there's a restart fee and yada yada. So that's something you need to look
shame
into.
on ChargePoint. Sure, yeah. It's a possibility, but shame on them if they would do that.
I did not even think of that.
Let me throw one other thing out there. So what you're talking about now is essentially when you say City of Portage absorbs the cost. So what do you say to the sort of people that aren't really into the whole EV thing? Well, why should I pay for this with my taxes? To subsidize EV drivers. And then let me put another bug in your ear while you're stewing on that. There's an organization called Adopt a Charger. One of the things that they do is they partner with businesses, with EV outreach organizations it's kind of like the Adopt a Highway thing, where somebody will put up the money, or I think they help with some of this administration. Maybe they find some angel investors, things like that. You put in some chargers and they keep them free. They're non-networked, super simple, right? No cards, no networks, no RFID cards, no apps. You just plug in and it just charges, and then the cost is absorbed by whoever the organization or the individual is that adopts that charger. We've talked about the EV community doing things like that. I keep some spare home chargers whenever I find a good deal. One is being sold used on Facebook Marketplace or whatever, and then I either give them away or I sell them at cost to people that are needy. I mean, what do you think about that? Did you think an organization like Kiva or the Electric Vehicle Association might be up for helping out with something like that?
I think we'll knock on that door next, right, Dave? We'll go hit Portage up. That would be the first simplest, which it didn't dawn on me because I'm kind of anti-ChargePoint. So I didn't want to throw them any more business. But now hearing it all sounded out here, I'm like, that is a good idea. I was, I had a wall up against that, but that makes the most sense, the quickest option. If that doesn't work, then Dave and I had talked, we're both willing to kick in $50 to help this go. So I think our next step, if Portage doesn't work, we'll go to Kiva, talk with Paul, and see if we can't get an adopter charger thing going.
Except on since they are charge points, there would be that monthly fee, and that seems exorbitant to me.
If you're giving away electricity, to me, you need to get rid of the whole network thing,
right?
Because you're
Yep.
paying for
Agreed.
overhead you don't
Agreed.
need, right?
Right.
I don't need for somebody to come in with a card and unlock it if I'm giving away electricity.
Right.
Then
So
then you put a Grizzly, a Grizzly unit up there, 40 amps, $350, plug it in, you just start charging.
All right. Well, here's the other thing though. People that aren't aware, that is a cool setup. It's a one post. It has two plugs out and they're on retractors. So it is really nice cord management. And it's a shame that although the movie theater owns it, so Dave and I were talking, there are some UL rated things that don't have the cord. Can we go in there, gut it?
I don't think the things you and I were talking about are not UL rated.
So anyways, hopefully somebody has done this because I think there's a lot of these charge points. I know the college had some, right? It's a nice pedestal setup with these retracting cords. So can we somehow recycle that?
A person you might want to talk to is Ben Nelson, the guy we had on the podcast from Wisconsin,
across the pond, so to speak.
Across the pond. He bought an older charge point unit and he uses it at his house. So I suspect that there's a way that you can just unlock this thing, or basically you rip out the guts and put the guts of a standard EVSE in there and just use the cord and the cord management. Of course, you need some technical skill, which Ben clearly has. But
now what Dave? I was talking to Dave about that. What is your thoughts, Carl? You're a lot more publicly involved with consumers. What about the UL rating? How important is that? Safety? Is a movie theater going to be uncomfortable that we just threw other guts in there? Or you think no?
Yeah, my example, Carl, what we were talking about, Open EVSE, you can buy a board it's the J1772 on a board essentially, but it's not UL rated because it's part of a kit.
Yeah, so obviously, anytime you get an organization behind it that are very sensitive to liability, they're going to want to do that. So I can tell you from a consumer's energy perspective, all the rebates that we give for home chargers now require UL listing and Energy Star rating.
So does it require UL, or isn't there, what's the Canadian?
Yeah, they're safety certified, I think is perhaps the more umbrella. I mean, we talk about UL listed, but there are other certification bodies. The only question is whether they are, what we call RAGAGEPS, recognized and generally accepted engineering practice, right? Whether that's an accepted engineering practice.
Well, J1772 has all the safety. It even has
that's an SAE standard, right? Society
of
Automotive Engineers.
It is, but it's a lot of the safety. It has ground fault built into it. So it's not that this board has been, as that board has been assembled, rated by CSE or other rating agencies, but it does conform to the J1772 standard. I don't know if that would be enough, from a liability.
Again, that would be a question for the charging host, right? Because they're the ones on the hook. They're going to be the ones standing in a courtroom, and they may just say, you know what, I want all the safety certifications. And to be honest, it's not that expensive, right? The Grizzly unit, I'm not sponsored or anything, but I really like them. They're Canadian made, they're UL listed, 3-year warranty. Their cases are waterproof. And there are others out there. I mean, Clipper Creek has been a very solid unit, something like that. So to me, I wouldn't cheap out for $100 here and there and then worry about things like safety ratings.
Yeah, is it $350 for the Grizzly?
for the standard one, the non-networked. You know, if you start going to the network ones that has smart features, they're a little bit more expensive. The one I think maybe you alluded to, Larry, was the one with two J1772 plugs that does the power sharing internally. Now those are more expensive. Those are like 800, I believe.
Yeah,
And
they
so
are.
the
I was
idea
just
there
looking at them
is,
yesterday.
yeah, my boss has one of those in his house, and the idea is he's got two EVs and he's got a NEMA 1450 plug, and it plugs into that. And when you have both vehicles plugged in, it will split the power between the two of them.
Yeah.
And as soon as you unplug one of them, the other one gets the full power. I'm sure you can also set it up to do like a primary and a secondary, charge one vehicle first and the other, as opposed to 50-50 splitting.
That
But
is
the
so
point,
cool, man. That
but
is
the
some
point
great
is
tech.
that you can share power, which, you
Yeah.
know,
Clipper
the people
Creek,
sharing, yeah, Clipper Creek has one of those as
they have
well.
the same thing. Yeah.
Is
And
that
you,
at the hospital, right?
No, the ones at the People's Food Co-op is one of those. It's a two-headed unit, and it looks like two separate Clipper Creeks,
but
and
they
I thought it
power share,
was,
yeah.
but then somebody came and plugged in next to me, and I went from 8 kilowatts to I think 6.
Yeah. So it's a little bit annoying if you're the person charging, but you're getting something, right? If it's
Yeah,
for
yeah.
overnight charging or long-term
Still getting
charging,
6 kilowatts. That's
and
fine.
and as soon as the other vehicle is done charging, even if they don't
Goes right
unplug,
back up to full power. Yeah.
yep. I had this happen I was in Pittsburgh at the Ball Stadium, and there were Tesla chargers there. There was a whole bank of them. And the funny thing is they were all networked together. So a single car could get, I don't know, like 80 amps if your car can take it. And as soon as another car comes in, you're getting 60, then 40, then 20, you know, and so on. It's kind of funny. So it's like you could look at your app and say, oh, somebody else plugged in. Oh, somebody else plugged in. But I still had a full charge at the end of the game.
Well, good stuff. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to throw this out there. I know it's been, if nothing else, just the practicality of it. It's a shame they're sitting out there trash bag.
Yeah.
I needed to do it just for Dave to help me put my wall down towards charge point. I think that's our next step.
It seems like a possibility.
Yeah, let's go talk to Portage.
Yeah. So I think maybe overall, and I'm sorry if I came across as combative, but you know, these are things that you have to think about when you're talking to
Right.
people that aren't EV, you know, not necessarily EV unfriendly, but they like show me the money, right? They have to understand that there's something in it for them, whether it's the actual revenue or increased business, or, you know, some organizations may just have environmental goals. They want to show that they're inclusive to the EV community. I mean, look at like Charlotte Library. They put in EV chargers and they put in hitching posts for the Amish. So, you know, we want to serve the whole community.
Yeah.
So that can
There's a
be an
bank in
incentive.
Portage you were talking about incentives. If you're going to have a LEED certified building, you know, you need so many points. You could put in certain
Exactly.
types of windows, certain types of insulation, certain type of roof, maybe a green roof. But one of the ways you can get points, I believe, is to have an EVSE.
That's
And
correct.
so
Yeah.
there's, you know, how long are you at a bank? Minutes? Why would they put in an EVSE? I think it was to get their LEED certification, and they've been great. It broke a few years ago. I'm a customer, and I said, "Hey, your unit's broken." They got it repaired. It's a non-networked. Can't remember
Over
the
off of
brand. Yeah,
Westridge by
yeah,
the
it's non-networked, and they've been fabulous about it. It'll throw a fault once in a while, and all they need to do, they don't even need to open the box. They just found they can reset the
Breaker.
breaker inside the bank. It resets the fault. So yeah, there are other incentives or reasons, and for them, it was just LEED certification, I think,
Mm-hmm.
for their building.
And you bank there. I mean, you might have a
Yep.
positive attitude towards that and say,
Well, I
well,
didn't bank there until they put that in.
well, there you go
And then
then.
they put that in, and I use it a lot because of its location. It's right on Westnidge.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll
there's a
park there and meet
road
friends. Oh,
right there.
there's
Yeah.
everywhere to eat. There's all sorts of things. And I was using it so much, I thought, you know what? I should open an account here.
Well, there
So
you go.
Nice.
Then that's driving business. That's exactly what I'm talking
yeah,
about. Well, thanks, gentlemen. Great conversation. And yeah, I mean, these are the things that we have to think about in the EV community, when we can't just slam our fist on the table and go into
right.
management of a business and say we demand EV charging. There's got to be something in it for them. All right.
So I'm excited about getting this to the management there, and hopefully this will get some. But Dave and I are going to be in contact and go visit Portage as soon as possible.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for joining us to our listeners. If you have any thoughts on this topic, please leave them in the comments below, or get in touch with us and see what other conversations we should be having in the future. And thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed or learned from this episode of Zero E Michigan, please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Visit our YouTube channel for other related videos at youtube.com/@0E-Michigan.